Covering Tallahassee, the community is weighing in on the future of the old Wahnish Cigar Factory. That happened this morning during a Tallahassee Development Review Committee meeting. We previously shared the 120-year-old brick building is likely to be demolished for apartments despite its historic status. The developer argued before the local Historical Preservation Board the building couldn't work with its plans. But news of its potential demo sparked pushback from local historians. Today's development meeting was the public's first chance to weigh in since the attention on that project.
And FAMU means housing, FSU means housing. There is a need, but we have to draw the line somewhere where we're going to start tearing down things that are that valuable to our community. Let's think twice about this.
And providing a community space, which is what I think that building should become, not another coffee shop right down the street from a coffee shop, not more luxury student housing.
For the character of Tallahassee, which is very important to those of us that are going to stay here, we kind of recommend they maintain that building.
Creating places with character, authenticity, and economic value that cannot be replicated once they are gone. I ask this committee to deny the site plan that requires the demolition of the historic resource and instead encourage a plan that incorporates the historic building and preservation as part of this redevelopment.
The board decided to delay its vote on the developer's most recent construction request to September.